Today's topic is nonprofit management, all right? And our first guest is Mr. Mark Rohlena. He currently works at the USCCB. He's a policy director over there, and he's going to share a little bit about how he got to where he is, and then how his education helped him, and kind of an inside scoop on what to expect if you are interested in pursuing that route. So without further ado, Mr. Rohlena.
Well, thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. This would have been a dangerous place for us to have had during our time at Christendom. It's like a bar with beer and other things. But really happy to be here and for the invitation. Hopefully there's something in my experience that will be helpful to you all. I think it's great that you have these evenings as a resource, and have been impressed by what I've heard about the work of the Career Services Office. Ours was not quite as robust, although I think it was effective back in the day, so you're giving a great gift, and I'm glad to be here. Most alumni have said it in these presentations that Christendom is a wonderful place to come back to. And in a lot of ways, it's easy to feel like you're back home. And while you're going through the experience, you probably hear this a lot, you don't necessarily appreciate, again, the gift that you're being given in your time here in terms of formation, friendships, sometimes marriages that come out of your time here. And so for us, it's a place that we really enjoy coming back to and think about fondly. So please drink it in, as one of my favorite professors often likes to say. I do have to begin with a disclaimer, two really. First, as Greg mentioned, I'm the lead staff the domestic policy area in the U.S. Bishops Conference, but I'm here in my individual capacity. Nothing I'm saying is an official position of the USCCB. Unfortunately, I would like to try to keep any Q&A that might happen, at least on camera, just focused on some of the practical things we're going to talk about. If anybody wants to talk about USCCB policy positions, we can do that maybe one-on-one in a different context.
We'll turn the camera off.
Yeah, there we go. And then second, I do have to admit that I didn't enter the nonprofit world in the traditional Orthodox way. I didn't take a conventional path to get there. And when I was in your shoes, the last thing I expected was, one, to be working in the nonprofit area, and two, to be working for the church. Those were two things that were very far from my mind. So my experience won't necessarily give you a traditional path, though I think there's some insight that can be gained from taking an unconventional route. And I think that's helped me, and Ken's probably got some experiences along those lines too. So hopefully, again, something of value. So I'm a 2000 grad, majored in political science and economics, as well as history. And Christendom truly provides such a solid foundation. A true liberal arts education is something that really is hard to appreciate in a full way until you're out in the world experiencing how it has an effect on your next stages of life. You really are given an ability to analyze, to think, to weigh, deconstruct, but also to build back up into something cohesive, which is something, we hear a lot in academics around the country about critical thinking. But it tends to be critical thinking that never actually gets to the answers or the truth. So it's not very useful in a lot of contexts. So again, I think most majors give you an ability to write clearly, to construct an argument in an ordered way. You get a chance too here to talk through weighty concepts with folks of like mind, mostly like mind. I'm sure there's some interesting discussions, and during your time here there was when I was here as well. And really a treasury of truth to guide you for a lifetime. And it's really something unique. I used to go to the University of Washington when I was a student here and just visit the classes there so I could appreciate a little bit about the differences. And oftentimes you had these massive classes, hundreds of people, taught by teachers' assistants often. And there was such a desire to specialize so quickly without forming a foundation. So maybe you already sense this idea of a university approach that you're being given as a soon-to-be Christendom grad for some of you is really something unique. It's a great reason for hope, and I think a call for humility, because we know through what we learn how frail we are. After Christendom, I went to law school. I was in the first class at the Ave Maria School of Law when it was still in Michigan. And Christendom there really helped me academically in law school. Again, all the tools, the way to analyze and deconstruct, to go through dense material and make sense of it was something that was really useful. And there's a number of Christendom grads who have gone on to practice law. I think that's a great area, even if you wanted to get in the nonprofit world. That's a great step if you had thought about maybe doing a stop in grad school in law school. It's a good stepping stone. Most importantly, in addition to falling in love with Christ on this campus in a new way, it was sort of a reconversion for me. Married my amazing wife, Danielle, and we married after my first year of law school, and she's free to, at any time, for anything I'm saying, to be a fact checker. So if there's anything I'm saying that's, I'm stretching the truth, let folks know, that's all right. But it's, getting married, this is a plug for marriage. We've got a lot of conversations about marriage, but for anybody who's approaching the decision and thinking about, do you do this before you're done it in school, grad school, or do you put this off? The Lord will provide. Don't wait till you finish school to marry. It's in many ways an ordering of your life. So I have to give that plug, because for us, we were in that conversation. Again, through law school, very for-profit minded. Wanted to work for a large law firm, and at Ave Maria, most of the things that I did were focused on trying to get into that world, and that's exactly what happened. Began as a litigation associate in a large law firm based out of the Rocky Mountain region in Denver. Did that for several years and enjoyed it, and I was drawn somewhat because of the formation here at Christendom to a new ethics position that the firm was creating. And this was something that had very challenging aspects to the work, advising senior attorneys, on folks who had been practicing for decades longer than I had, on ethics issues, conflicts issues within their cases, overseeing the ethical framework and the intake of new business into the firm. Nobody wanted my job, so there was a lot of job security, but in all the different aspects of what I was doing, trying to make sure that we had sort of a conscience. In the legal profession, there's rules of ethics, but there's also the opportunities to inject into the conversation what's the right thing to do by the client, even if legally speaking we can do it. And so I really enjoy this. Tough problems, challenging work, certainly financial reward. And it's at moments like that, I think that the Lord likes to show us that he has a healthy sense of humor, because we felt comfortable and we're around family in Colorado. And it was at that time, during a very intentional period of prayer, discernment, daily mass adoration, spiritual direction, that the Lord started working on our family and opening up this concept of care for the poor in a way that really hadn't been part of our framework in the past. And so I began volunteering at Catholic Charities, providing a legal aid, working in other ministries that help the poor, working with women in crisis pregnancies and folks transitioning out of prison. And what eventually became clear through these encounters, working directly with those most in need, and again, this is the Holy Spirit, I think, working most profoundly, was that this is something that was going to be part of our family's reality for a long time to come. At that point, we didn't know whether it would be a sidelight or it would be something that would, be more germane. But in enjoying the work we were doing and the position in the law firm, I didn't actually think we would be making a jump. But again, the Lord kept working over a period of about 3 years. And so a position at Catholic Charities, the CEO position, Catholic Charities in Colorado Springs opened up. And I asked Danielle what she would think if I put my name in for it. And so we agreed to enter that discernment together in a way that was really just letting go for the Lord and seeing what would happen. And that's a dangerous thing to do sometimes. I don't know if you've had that experience. The doors started to open, things became very easy in the process, and it became clear through that we were called to be there. I'll speak a little bit more about the discernment as really something that I really want to try to emphasize with you all, because we sometimes have in our mind what we think the Lord is calling us to do, because we've imposed that vision on what He's asking us. But sometimes we need to really enter into that spirit of openness. And as I mentioned, the biggest stumbling block was going to work for the church. I had known enough people who would work in the church. You see, we obviously have folks who are, humans with challenges in those settings, and kind of talking with folks and experiencing the diocese there allowed us to overcome that obstacle. At Catholic Charities, overseeing a nonprofit that covered 10 counties, we had the largest soup kitchen in the state, counseling, Project Rachel Ministries, parish outreach, family and homelessness services, immigration and naturalization. We actually got into some disaster relief work. There were some fires in Colorado. I don't know if you remember hearing about those, 2012, 2013. I didn't expect to get into that, but we certainly did. And what I enjoyed the most, in addition to caring for those most in need in a very direct way, was being able to lift up our faith in the work in a way that I think is important for particularly Catholic Charities and faith-based organizations that see as their core a mission. And I'll be honest, there are there's a great need for folks who have a strong formation in the faith to enter that world. As we look for folks to hire, being able to find people who really got the mission first and could be trained in the other things was something that it wasn't always easy to come by. So for any of those who are sincerely open to that, I encourage you to explore that call. And as part of that there was an advocacy component, giving a voice to those who aren't part of the conversations in their own community, those who are voiceless in those environments. And so that was something that was very attractive. And here again, we found ourselves pretty comfortable, good work, close to family, great community, running an organization, and the Lord showed his sense of humor in giving us the opportunity to come out here to the USCCB. I never had lost that attraction to political things from my time here at Christendom, and took full advantage of the Politics Practicum program and as much as I could for an internship in the summer when I was here. So there was an openness to this position, and again, we entered reluctantly into discernment, and the Lord made things very easy as we went through and came out here. So at this point, I work with Congress to advance policy positions for the USCCB on a range of issues, on Capitol Hill quite a bit, writing policy papers, trying to influence the legislative reality and really have deeper conversations about things that are near and dear to our hearts as Catholics, which is not always an easy thing to do, particularly as we get towards a presidential election year. So that's where we are now. I want to say just a little bit about the nonprofit world. It's wide and diverse. There's nonprofits like Catholic Charities, from broad care of others to very particular things around specific issues. So I can't possibly speak to it all. And I think the more traditional route, and I've had one conversation, I think somebody's contemplating this, would be a nonprofit management or social work route. And that certainly gets you connected into the world, helps you understand some of the tools that you'll need to succeed if you go in that way. So I can recommend that as a particular path. We relied on folks who had gone through that formation process in the work to do what we needed to do at organizations like Catholic Charities. So it's essential for those who want to take that route. The unconventional background, I think, helps. For me, my legal and management background was an asset. It needed to be tempered, though, because a business mindset in a nonprofit environment is an important thing when you're doing structures, policies, procedures, and trying to give a nonprofit some of the best practice type realities that it needs. But it's also an environment that's meant to be mission first. We meant to care for one another with the same standards that we would care for clients. And I think, particularly with the Catholic groups, we're called to that as a core part of our mission. So I think it's a balance there, and that's one of the things that became present during my time at Catholic Charities. And I think the atmosphere should feel somewhat different than the Fortune 500 environment, even though you want to be attentive to good procedure, risk management. All those things still have their place, and as an organization grows, that's important. In a mission-driven, nonprofit arena, your formation that you receive here at Christendom will set you apart. The rest can be learned, as I mentioned, when you get on-the-job training. But to be able to take on challenges and projects, sometimes you're doing a little bit of everything in a nonprofit environment. You're wearing a lot of different hats, and so to be able to be flexible, adaptable, to be able to think through particular problems is key. It's essential. So just a few points of advice, and then I'll turn it over to Ken. Things that hopefully you'll find helpful. First, we can sometimes get very hung up on our first thing we do after graduating from college or grad school. We're sort of in a free agent reality in a lot of ways. So even what you're doing for that first 5 years isn't going to make or break your future. And every experience that you have is going to be valuable. Build upon your what you learned here and build towards things in the future. So, be open to things that maybe seem a little bit afield from what you want to do if you think it will be valuable in other ways. And then discernment. We talked a little bit about this. I meant to bring a copy of a little book called The Novena of Holy Communions. I don't know if any of you have ever run into it. It's a Father Lovasic book. You pray the novena, going to Holy Communion for the 9 days, and then you immediately start a 9-day novena in Thanksgiving, sometimes before you realize what the graces will be. So that's 18 days of receiving a communion. So we've been saying that for just about every major decision in our life since I think we were students here. And it's been important, not because it's magic, but because it's put us in the right frame of mind for discernment. And I think particularly when we're thinking about jobs and what we want to do for our careers, you never want to discern from a place of anxiety or a bad place. You want to find that center and be able to be open to what the Lord may be prompting you to, because sometimes that will be something that doesn't seem exactly to fit the picture that you have in mind. And really, in that, we converse with the Lord. We trust that He has a plan for us. And I think there's a great comfort in knowing that He has in mind something in His plan for you. There's a great comfort that if you give that over to Him, that He's not going to lead you astray. So sometimes these decisions get to be a little less ominous when we take that approach. And it's been fruitful for us, at least. And I think some openness, again, to what may seem not to be on that direct path. You know, one of the things that we take a risk coming to Christendom, and in some people's eyes, certainly took a risk going to Ave Maria. And a lot of the questions when I went to that first class was, are you going to be able to get a job when you graduate from this place, and from Ave Maria? And what turned out to be the case was the connections and the people that I got to know there actually opened the doors for the next phase that then built to where we are today. So God will honor your trust when you take those leaps of faith, and I think every step along the way. So just being open to that. Another piece of advice that's been useful for me, at least, is trying to take advantage of every chance you get to sort of taste what you think you want to do. You've got great resources here with Greg and the faculty and staff who have experiences that I certainly didn't appreciate well enough when I was here, to just pick their brain on who they have worked with, who in their family are doing particular things, what they've done in their backgrounds. Those connections can be huge. Tap into the Christendom, TAC, Steubenville, University of Dallas networks, grad networks. There's a certain amount of cachet that comes with being a grad of a school like this, where people are going to give you a hearing because they know that you're coming at it as a good person who's well-formed. And they sort of look at some of the qualifications maybe in another light. If there is a field or a specific nonprofit you're interested in, try to get in a low-level job, an internship, visit with the people who work there, shadow somebody for a week, become a known quantity, and experience a little bit of what it's like to work in that environment or in that particular place of employment, because you may learn, as I did at certain points in law school, there's some things that I thought I wanted to do that in reality it turned out not to be something that I was as interested in as I thought. And with a nonprofit environment, you've got a unique opportunity to volunteer. You can at least get a feel for the culture. You can sometimes come in with an outside-the-box kind of proposal for volunteer work that fits maybe something that you'd like to do. We had a great volunteer at Catholic Charities who was interested in helping us with our strategic planning process, and that was her educational background. And so she helped us with that, board retreats and other things, and we ended up hiring her to do some work in the administration after that experience, because we got to see her in action. And I'll say, sometimes the paycheck is less important than the experience and the exposure to folks. If you have to work a part-time job to make it work, but you're in the door, I know that sounds a little bit daunting, but it can be important. You hear a lot about it's who you know, and sometimes that's said with a certain amount of frustration. I don't have the right connections to make this work. I think a better way to look at it is it's all about relationship. And our faith, our family, eventually our work, are all fruits of relationship with God and with others. So in everything, it's important to try to cultivate relationships in a really genuine way and maintain those. Learn all you can from those doing what you want to do. Let them tell their story. You don't have to prove yourself, in the first conversations. Hear what they're about and why they were drawn to the work, and build up that rapport and that relationship. Take people to lunch. And a nice byproduct of those relationships will be that God will arrange them in the right way to meet your vocation, what you're meant to be called to. This is a very practical tip, but it's something that has been huge for me, and I appreciate it when I see it on the other side, is handwrite thank you notes within 24 hours of any significant meeting. A small kindness to somebody, takes you to lunch and just a talk. Certainly key meetings and interviews. An email doesn't do it. Try to get that handwritten note, bring them with you if you have to, and drop them in the mail once you're done with that visit, because that will set you apart. These days, folks don't do that as much as they should. And if you have an interview, don't just send it to the principal. Anybody who you visited with, because they will get together and say, "Oh, got a note from so and so." Oh yeah, me too, and that becomes a conversation point. Suddenly you're in focus. And this is maybe a longer term point, and because it's part of our experience, it's worth mentioning. Don't be afraid to trade off money considerations for things that really matter. We made some decisions that impacted earning potential for our family when we left the law firm, and we haven't regretted it for a second. The Lord provides. And I think it's important that we focus on the time to be fully present to God and to be present to family, and that's our call. You know, we owe first fruits to God, our money, our time, our prayer life. Our families are next, and then our job is third on the list. So if we don't honor that hierarchy, you know, we won't be successful in the ways that are important to our long-term sanctity. Sometimes that means picking a job that isn't top on our list, as much as, and I think you'll find that the Lord will open that up and let it blossom. But it may mean setting parameters in a reasonable way once you get your feet wet. But there's ways that I think God will honor that sincere effort to honor your families. And then just finally, one word. I think Christendom exemplifies this. You go on campus here and you sense the joy, but don't lose that. You know, we sort of get into the grind. But there's something about that joyful witness in whatever field you choose, but particularly in the nonprofit environment where you see such dire circumstances day after day after day. With folks, and maybe there doesn't seem to be an improvement. To really have that joyful witness, we're radically living in a way that honors what we believe and is attractive to other people. There's a sense that they want some of what you have, even as you're walking with them. You know, the circumstances. If any environment you go to work in, you're going to probably run into folks who are from very different backgrounds at different stages of life, encountering different challenges, and to be able to patiently endure the gritty realities that they're experiencing in a way that honors your Christianity. I think that's something that we need a lot more of. And so bottle whatever joy you have in being on this campus and keep it with you, because I think it's much needed.